This episode was sponsored by the Geopolitical Insight and Education Foundation. Want to find out more? Check the link in our show notes. Welcome to another episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. So guys, you do recognize my voice. It's always Rosie here. And as I've said many times, this is just for students and young professionals who are very interested in anything that has to do with technology. And yes, it's regulation. And today we go back to the beginning, literally back to the beginning, with someone who has come on the podcast as our first guest and is now back again in a better weather, I would say, because last time it was full November.
Hi.
And is now calling from the University of Leiden, where he works. It is Associate Professor Gianclaudio Malgieri. Great to see you, Gianclaudio.
Hello, I'm very happy to be back after several months.
After a bit of time, some time is gone. Now I have a new tan. Apparently, some of our guests have noticed that. But you also have something new to talk about, something very great that of which you have been the main editor. This is a very interesting publication from Hart Publishing and Bloomsbury Publishing. It is the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, a thematic commentary. And you have been the main editor with your fellow co-editors, Gloria Gonzalez Fuster, Alessandro Mantelero, and Gloria Zamfir Fortuna. They are very, very known also on the podcast, and they're very good friends of ours. And yeah, it's exciting. How are you feeling about this publication? Are you happy?
Yeah, I cannot believe it's printed. It took 2 years and a lot of emails, reading, interactions, iterations. So yes, I feel relieved, and I was at the beginning a bit skeptical about the fact that this could be printed, and now it's there. So I must believe it.
It's unbelievable. It took you very far in terms of the process of writing this very interesting and very helpful, actually, manual to understand the AI Act. The process of editing such a publication is not the most kind of easy to understand if you're not used to these kind of publications, right? How was it for you? Was this the first experience you had? Was this different from any other type of experience you'd had before? Were you expecting this to come up this way?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think indeed it was a very big managerial task. It's the first time I edit a commentary. It's not the first time I edit a volume because we did some GDPR handbook in the past and similar works, but this was the first editorial commentary that I did. That I built a bit on my experience as the managing editor of Computer Law Security Review, but that's a bit different because in that case, we don't have the urgency of a single law that should be commented, and also with a lot of changes happening every month, with proposals of changes, reforms, code of conducts, code of practices, standards, and so this was a big challenge, a big run, and so it took 2 years. So we started. The first idea came. In this office where I am now, in June 2024, I contacted my co-authors one by one. So I first contacted Alessandro Mantelero, then we contacted Gloria Gonzalez Fuster and Gabriella Zamfir Fortuna. And even though they agreed with us that it was a super crazy idea, they then accepted because, of course, the topic was important and because we saw that many commentaries were already happening, but some of them were had a article by article approach, and we wanted to have something. It was a compromise between an article by article commentary and a manageable volume for people who are studying the AI Act. And so our thematic commentary is indeed meant for both, for researchers but also for students. So this was a bit the challenge to come from many articles of the AI Act to 38 chapters. So we had to kind of scope the articles to chapters, and also the I would say what was very problematic or kind of challenging was to make sure that all the authors would be diverse, experienced, but also that would respect the deadlines. So we have I was just looking at some numbers. We have 41 authors and from four continents. And we have, yeah, from 14 different countries. So we have Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, US, Portugal, Luxembourg, UK, France, Austria, Brazil, Poland, Norway, Germany, and Turkey. But we also have people who are not from universities. So we have 28 universities affiliated, but also we have six authors coming from professional practice, and we are very proud of this diversity. We have two coming from regulatory institutions and four coming from NGOs. So this is just to give you a bit of a quick picture of the complexity, but it was also a lot of fun because we reading it, we learned a lot, and we also shaped our views during the journey. So, and I must thank also the publisher. Hart Bloomsbury was extremely supportive. It was a much quicker process than other publishers would have made it possible. So we are grateful, and also let me just mention, because we mentioned many names, but two names need to be mentioned, is our editorial assistants, Maria Lucia Rebrian from Leiden University and Michael van den Poel from Vrije Universiteit Brussels. They were essential in helping us to keep the pace and to manage this big book. Imagine just sending an email to 41 authors with specific different requests. So, and sometimes we had to do it from the night to the morning. So yeah, it was a challenge.
Wow, that sounds absolutely incredible in terms of the volume. I absolutely love this idea that you actually made it into 38 chapters, because I feel like the AI sometimes does repeat itself and you're there like, I've seen this already. Where was it? I have no clue. So great that someone has put the things that maybe students love the most into practice, which is writing summaries a lot for
Yeah.
memorizing entire books from law and stuff. So
Yeah.
great job, and this will be very much appreciated from my perspective. Anyways, you did talk a bit about the authors. You said it's 41 authors coming from different countries. What's the process of selection of an author, if I may ask? How did you decide which person was better or which persons were better for analyzing a specific topic?
Mm.
Did you have kind of any restrictions given by the publisher? How was this kind of organized?
Yeah, this is also something that indeed we should acknowledge. The publisher required that all academic authors would be senior, so it would be people with a PhD. So either professors, associate professor, assistant professor, postdoc. In some very exceptional cases, we have PhD students who authored some chapters, but these were just, I would say, three cases. And for each of these cases, we have next to them a professor working with them. So this was the high standard that Hart and Bloomsbury required us. This was a bit of a challenge for us because we know from experience that PhD student might be more timely, more precise sometimes in terms of deadline, in terms of depth, but at the same time, having senior authors is a good investment in quality. So we could say that even though we had to, we everything went through two rounds of reviews, so that's why it took 2 years. But actually a bit less than 2 years because it was 1 year and 11 months. But I would say that the whole process required not substantial changes in terms of chapters because the authors were already very senior. How did we decide which authors could be for each chapter? Sometimes a topic has a couple of very important flag names. So, for example, you know that someone is working on I don't know, emotion recognition or biometrics, and so this was our first choice, and they accepted. In other cases we looked at what requires a bigger um, what requires a bigger how can I say, compliance reflection. So sometimes we relied on law firm partners, and this was also a choice that we had. And there were other chapters for which we said, for which some authors accepted and then they could not deliver. And so in that case, we found a good replacement. Maybe in one case, I was the replacement. So, but yeah, I would say that in general, we applied very high standards of, quality, as of course every academic work should do. And sometimes we had also to, in one or two cases, we had to ask a total rewriting of the chapter. I think this is part of the process. And the author then eventually also delegated to other people. I mean, all different stories. Every chapter is a story.
These are very interesting stories, as you said, and I also, indeed, I was wondering. I saw that you were also writing something within the book. You have been the author of two chapters, if I'm not mistaken, or three chapters.
Yeah.
One about the interplay of the AI Act with the DSA, which is
Yeah.
a very, very beloved topic of mine. As I said, you did save my dissertation because of your knowledge about the
Oh, wow.
DSA and the AI Act. So,
Yeah.
but then there's also another one on the right of explanation that's also very, very important. And then, of course, you've kind of written the first chapter, which is also very
Yeah.
helpful, which is about the objectives of the law.
Yeah.
Going beyond what you have written yourself, as an editor, and of course we're not doing any, we don't have any favorites. I know that you love them all the 38 chapters, but if you had to pick one that, for example, really shocked you or like taught you something. I know it's difficult for you to be taught something, but try. Or for example, added a point of view that you were not expecting, which one would it be, or which ones would it be?
Um, so you mean some chapters that were particularly surprising or interesting? Yeah, so yeah, I would say it was very interesting, for example, to navigate. Just to mention, for example, for my articles, for my chapters, the right to explanation was for me a natural opportunity to proceed the work, to continue the work that I have started many years ago, 6, 7 years ago with Margot Kaminsky. So that was a true gift for me, and also that she accepted to write an article on a right to explanation. Other articles that were very interesting for us were that had a very challenging approach were, for example, the systemic risk chapter by Connor Dunlop. Of course, it was a super challenging question, and he managed to navigate it. And I have then made a reference to that in the DSA AI Act chapter, the one that you mentioned. Another chapter that I can say had a challenging story is the chapter by Gianmarco Gori, the AI Act and Product Liability Directive, because at the beginning the title was the AI Act and the AI Liability Directive, but the AI Liability Directive has been withdrawn. So he had to basically rewrite the chapter. This happens a lot in digital law, I guess, because we have so many updates. I guess it happens much less when you write a commentary on contract law or a commentary on, like culpability in criminal law. So I think that was also something. Another challenge was the very last chapter. So the DMA, Data Act, and AI Act. That was a bit of a bet for us because we said, is there a link? Is there really a meaningful link between DMA, DAA, and Data Act and AI Act? But we had done on the GDPR, we had done on the DSA, we had done on liability. So we said, for completeness, let's check also that link. So I'm very grateful that three colleague and great lawyers took this challenge. Mohammed Demirjan and Heidi Weim and Osman Ghazi from they are all from DLA Piper, and Osman Ghazi is also at Galatasaray University. They took the challenge and they say, let's see how competition law interacts with the AI Act. So that was a bit the thing. Oh yeah, maybe something else to mention. Also, the standards chapter. So the chapter by Irene Camara was also very problematic because she's so great in standards. And then we said, yeah, but for registration, I think it makes sense to have in the same chapter. But this was an editorial decision that we took during the journey. So at the beginning, we had decided to have a separate article on registration. So she was so great that she last minute decided to onboard also the part on certificates and registration and not just standards. Also, that chapter is open to a lot of changes for the future because the standards are being published soon, and so this is also something. And some of the standards are already completed. So of course, this is a printed book. This is not a website per se, but we have a companion website. Maybe we will talk about that later. So yeah, really every chapter has a story. So it's difficult to to give justice to all of them. Okay, maybe a final thing to say. One of the challenges was also to decide how to distribute the prohibition, because the prohibitions of the AI Act are it's just one article. So indeed, it's the AI Act per se has so many articles. I think 90, no 100 something, 101. But just for Article 5, we dedicated 5 chapters, because of course it's dense, and legally speaking, that's one of the most important messages of the AI Act. So for that one, at the beginning we said, okay, shall we divide the letters of Article 5? So prohibition on related to human vulnerability, social scoring, predictive policing. But then it would have been a bit problematic. So we decided to keep together, for example, 5.1a and 5.1b, so manipulation and vulnerability, or to keep together predictive policing and facial recognition, or to have together also all the things related to biometrics that are many, because we have a emotion recognition ban for in certain areas, but you have also biometric for surveillance. And so I must be particularly grateful to all the authors of this part 2, the prohibited practice. Maybe I can name them. Maria Rebren, Silvia De Conca, Nathan Jenico, Bart Kusters, Andrea Ausselman, and Gavin Robinson.
I know that Jack will have a lot of fun in trying to find these people and tag them. So
Oh, yeah.
good luck to him. No,
Yeah.
but absolutely, you did them right in terms of mentioning them, because Article 5 is one of the most difficult ones to actually describe. And I've noticed that actually maybe the Commission has read your book, because they tend to now kind of put together the same numbers as you did. So who knows? Maybe maybe there was some influence. We will ask commissions
Oh,
when they will come on podcast.
hopefully.
No, but actually, as you mentioned, you also have a website, and I was going to ask you about it because, of course, we know that the 19th of November of 2025 marks a very special date, which is when the Commission put out a proposal for something that's called the Digital Omnibus. And we also know that the part of this omnibus that has to do with the AI Act actually got discussed, and there was a deal. It was a much more kind of time constrained section because of, there was the issue of some parts of the Act being repealed or moved forward. So all of this happened, I guess, in the process of writing the book. How did you kind of confront this problem, and how do you plan on dealing with it in the future?
Yeah, so I'll start from an anecdote. After the first launch of the book at CPDP conference in Brussels, the publisher came to me after the panel and said, "Do you think you're ready for a second edition?" And I said, "Come on! I mean, to have a second edition, it means that it's so successful that you need to reprint, and then of course in a second edition you would have a lot of updates." This was a joke, but also not just a joke, because she said, "I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm around this book because, as we said, the seniority of the authors, the gravitas of the authors and of the also of the editors, helps to disseminate a lot. We have already 3 book launch plans just during the summer, so it's a lot of enthusiasm." We have, and this is also clarified in our on the website and on the introduction, we will have a companion website. We will have a companion website that will be Bloomsbury. Well, we can put perhaps then in the description of the episode, bloomsbury.pub/EU dash artificial dash intelligence dash act, and that will be where in after the approval of the digital omnibus on AI, we will write the updates. This will be accessible to everybody, but will make sense just for the people who buy the book because we will refer to specific chapters with the specific changes. We are kind of happy that the digital omnibus on AI is not a big revolution. So it's not such a huge change of the AI Act. It's kind of postponing some deadlines. It's changing, the some of the bias rules, the literacy part, and and then a lot of technical parts of towards the end. So during the summer, we will make sure to update these parts, and we will then have an online version on the companion website.
It's very interesting. Yes, I do agree with you that the digital omnibus probably has been spoken about more than actually been dealt with. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always very exciting when a law that hasn't really actually completely come into force gets updated straight away right before it's coming into force. So I think maybe that's what kind of generated so much interest in the topic. Not
Yeah.
to say that it's a very interesting law in general. It's something that I think we need to all kind of think about. And it's great that you've thought of coming up with a publication that, again, deals with this specific law
Yeah.
from this very interesting perspective and with this kind of mindset in mind. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned also this idea of like doing a second edition, and your editor very
Mhm.
nicely saying, "Are you your publisher? Sorry, are you ready for it?" Implying that maybe you were tired beforehand, I guess. Um,
Mhm.
what's been the most challenging part of coming up
Mhm.
with this book together? Like one thing that you're like,
Mhm.
had me become tired, you know?
Um, yeah, many things. I already mentioned some. I would say maybe one of the most challenging parts was the last part of the book, so the AI Act interaction with the rest of the digital rule book, because sometimes it's really a maze. So it's really difficult sometimes to put together, the notion, I don't know, impact assessment from 3 different laws, the notion of systemic risk from 2 different laws, the notion of dark patterns that is regulating in 3, 4 different laws. So that's all these things are for us extremely were a challenge, as I was saying. So we were trying to have, but we really wanted to have a comparative part, and this is there are many AI Act books, but I guess this is the only AI Act book that has that dedicates more than 100 pages to the interaction between the AI Act and the other laws, which is not just the GDPR, but of course the GDPR. One of the co-editor, Gloria Gonzalez Fuster, was also the author of this article, the AI Act and the GDPR. But we had the DSA, as you said, we had the product liability, we had the DMA and Data Act. So this was a bit of a let's say a challenge, but we managed. Yeah, and another thing was, I would say, just managing people. Academia is full of people that are last minute, so a lot of deadlines. It was really a social psychological work when we had to set the deadline. Then the deadline was actually there was a fake deadline, then there was a real deadline, then there was a deadly deadline, and then there was hunting the people. And in one case, I think we can say that we were ghosted. We were casted by one of this, but it's not a scholar, maybe that was a problem. But yeah, we were totally gossiped by this person. I've not heard from him or from her. We don't know from them anymore. It's not just me. All the co-editors were ghosted by that person. So it can happen, right? We don't want that to happen, but this has also happened. And we are so grateful to the person that in 3 weeks managed to write a chapter of high quality. And this new person was one of our hero. Now, if I mention this person, we might understand what was the previous author. But yeah, I would say that this was really so. I can say that from a human perspective, this was such a good opportunity to work with the three amazing co-editors and two amazing editorial assistants, but also with some authors who were generous to engage with rapid changes. I already mentioned Irene Camara for the standards article, Gianmarco Gori for the product liability, and other heroes for, just to mention randomly, people that decided to do 2 chapters in a row, like Phil Lee or Alessandro Mantelero, and so it was. And the Boluga. So we had a lot of human support and humane support.
Yeah, and I was wondering, just because you've mentioned you've had someone from Turkey kind of
Yeah.
tying in on the DMA chapter, if I'm not mistaken, Philly. But you've mentioned comparative law, and of course, comparative law can mean between legislations. So you've talked about the GDPR, the DSA, the DMA, the product liability, but also it can mean kind of like looking at what the tradition in specific countries is. And I was wondering, because you've mentioned so many countries, you've mentioned Brazil,
Mm.
why did you, and if I may ask, why did you decide to have authors that are not European to write a book about the EUA Act?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the non-European countries that we included were indeed affiliations that we included were United States, Brazil, Turkey, UK. So why? Because, for example, yeah, we can mention names in this case. When we were working on, so when we were looking for a chapter on the sandbox. Tiago Moraes is one of the best people to work on the topic, and he's also doing a PhD in Europe. So he's a member of the Brazilian Data Protection Authority. He's Brazilian, but also doing a PhD in Europe. So this was a unique combination. For Turkey, is the same as a scholar in Galatasaray who is working in also with European Union lawyers in Brussels, in a law firm in Brussels. For the United States, it's mostly European people who work there, like Anda Boluga, but also our co-editor Gabriela Zanfir Fortuna. She's a US citizen now. So I would say it's all people that have a strong link with the European Union or people that need to use the AI Act. For example, we mentioned United Kingdom, and yeah, Philly is working on and with European companies, European Union companies. So I would say there was no, let's say, discrimination on the basis of nationality, but we tried to really look at the unique best people for each topic.
Yeah, that's actually very helpful, I think, because someone may have asked, as I did. Also, quite like maybe a last note to kind of conclude this conversation. I think when someone puts something on paper, and literally on paper, because as you said, this is an actual paper book
Yeah.
with a book. A kind of holder, you told me. So it's a very kind of physical thing. It is something that's meant to stay longer, that can be cited, for example, that can't be changed very easily. I'm wondering, like, in terms of what you're maybe expecting or like what you're seeing in the future, like of people citing this book, of courts citing this book, and that's a very big possibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what is the kind of effect or the kind of aspect that you expect them to cite? What type of feeling would you like kind of to come out of the book and to be conveyed? And I know like professionality is something that you did mention, but is there something like a core value of the book that you really, really want to kind of treasure for the future?
Yeah, of course, I'm very biased, so I'm not in the best position to say what are the virtues of the book that should be taken by interpreters and policymakers. But I would say that what we hope is to inform future policymaking. So, for example, every chapter has, or not every chapter, most chapter have some critical remarks and policy recommendations. And this is very important. But also, something we really hope is that the consistency between different laws, and this is not just in the final part, it is really about consistency and the interplay between AI Act and other laws, but in general, the whole book was looking at consistency and suggesting interpretations. So we really hope that these interpretations can be taken, not just by judges, but also by policymakers for the future and also by national authorities. So every country of Europe or the European Union will have market surveillance authorities, will need to interpret what's happening, and so they would need to interpret why the second paragraph of Article 86 seems so vague about whether right to explanation already exists, it should not be covered. So what does it mean in practice? And we try to propose interpretation that seems reasonable to us, but also possible changes in the future. So these two things, so we would say the lege lata and the lege ferenda are both strong messages that we hope. And finally, I recently had to suggest a book for an AI course, and I actually found that our book might be good for purpose, even though it's a commentary. Usually, you don't suggest commentary to students, but if you select the right amount of chapters, I think it can be also a good introduction for students. Maybe not necessarily for like a pre-graduate, like bachelor students, but maybe also for them, but also for more advanced students. And I think this can also help to shape a bit the way the students will study the AI Act. So not very very quick summaries books, not even article by article commentaries, because it might be long for students, but the sides of this one, perhaps selecting the articles that the teacher decides more relevant for the course. This is also something we would really love.
What can I say? A perfect book. Let's remind everyone the title, just because I know they will find the link in our show notes directly to the the publisher house. But also the title is a 2026 edition, and it's called the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, a thematic commentary. And of course, as we mentioned, the main editor is Gianclaudio Malgieri, and then he's been working with other wonderful authors and co-authors. And this is absolutely a must read. Maybe not for the summer, it can be a bit heavy, just saying, to bring with. But I do hope that also some students will be listening to this podcast and will be understanding why it's an important textbook to perhaps have and look at and maybe study and understand better what the EU AI Act truly is. Well, thank you so much, Gianclaudio, for joining me today. I'm alone. It happens.
Thank you so much, Rosalie. It's a super great pleasure always.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you in partnership with DG Beetle. DG Beetle helps privacy professionals to stay up to date with the most important European documents in the AI, data and digital space every day. Curious to know more? Check out the link in our show notes.